Hi, my name is SouperTrooper on Game Dev League, and I'm here bringing you a tutorial about UV unwrapping in Blender. So, just so you know, I'm using Blender 2.76, and I'm also pretty much going to be assuming that you know how to use Blender. You know most of the hotkeys. A couple main differences: the way I manipulate the viewport, it's actually different. I'm using a lot of selecting with the left mouse and panning with the right mouse. Middle mouse does the... Anyways, you should already know this, so it shouldn't be a problem. If you do have a problem with all the hotkeys I'm using, this is available for you to look at anytime. One final thing is you should be set to Blender Render and Multi-Texture Textured Solid. Alright, so this is the Canon model that I actually made this 4 years ago, and I actually just made like a couple changes on it just to kind of like make it look better, in my opinion, and also hopefully to make sure it's optimized, because as you know, extra vertices that don't need to be there really kind of don't help. You can download the original model here and look at the differences. Also look at the problems of a lot of the things that I've done back then, that I did back then, and compare them with what I'm going to show you today. Right, so this is all kind of one object right now. I think normally you wouldn't want to have it all one object, but I don't know, for the purposes of this, it really doesn't matter. So let's just get started. They are separate meshes though, just so you know. Alright, so let's start with the barrel. By the way, a link to this model is provided in the description if you want to just pause and go and get that really quickly. Alright, let's start. So first things first, actually, I'm going to unhide that. Let's create a new panel. Open the UV image editor. Select our entire mesh and create a new UV grid. Name it whatever you want. Leave it at 1024 by 1024. And that is going to help us see what we're doing. If you kind of zoom in, you can see it's like turned gray. I'm not really sure why it's turned gray. Normally it changes a little bit different. Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on there, but I guess it's gray now. So we'll just leave it at that. So let's just hide the rest of the mesh and work on this. So first, I think I'm going to split it down the middle. Seems to be good. Let's not use the top. And let's remove most of the inside except for this one here. Let's mark a seam by hitting Control-E, mark seam. And let's hit U, unwrap. Alright, so now you can see why this is really important, because you can actually see how this grid is distributed over the surface of your mesh. And it looks okay, but it's not good, and it needs a bit of work. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove that from the front. Alright, so that's a little weird. Alright, that should be a little better. Okay, next, I'm actually just gonna triangulate that really quickly. Perfect. Okay, so next, let's get these protrusions separated. So you're gonna wanna select around where they connect to the mesh, or the barrel, I guess, and and just, oops. I'm hitting Shift, Alt, and clicking in order to add selections to the selection. I guess you should already know that. I should assume you already know that, but whatever. I'm just giving you a good tidbit of info. So then we hit U, unwrap again, and as you can see, it's looking a little bit better. Let's set this to angle based. All right, so now our barrel is looking better. We might have to change a couple things. I might have to maybe separate this. I would prefer separating these around where they are probably going to be creasing, because I don't really care too much about the creases, but you generally want to hide your seams. And that is also probably going to have to do this. All right, so okay, let's look at these. So I'm probably going to hide a seam here, and this is actually one of the two ways that you can UV a cylindrical object, I guess. Let's UV or unwrap. That's looking better. And here I'm going to do this on the inside. Whoops. And it's looking okay, except it's still stretching, so I think I'm going to, let's see. I think I'm going to separate it right around here. Oops. All right, so that's looking a little bit better. It's still stretching, so maybe here. All right, that's actually a lot better. I like that a lot better. Okay, so that's the barrel, sort of. Maybe this one looks like it's stretching in a weird way. All right, so sometimes what might happen is you might have to UV unwrap something separately, because you might need to change the way it's unwrapping. And when you do, it's going to be usually a lot more dense, because it's going to be trying to fit it within this this square, the texture. And what you can do to fix that is you can select all of the islands. I'm going to leave this open so you can see what I'm doing. So you can select all of the islands, go to UV's average island scale, or maybe pack islands. Yeah, pack islands. We'll do that. And then when you look at it, it should be lovely. All right, let's unhide the rest of it and start. Oops. All right, well, whatever. Let's just hide that. All right, so let's start on. Okay, well, these ones are just flat. They're modified planes. There's no underside to them, so they're not volumes, essentially. So will you unwrap, set those aside. All right, and actually we'll also get the bolts out of the way. Oops. Pretty much anything that's flat, or not, yeah, anything that's not a volume, I'm just gonna get out of the way right now. Set those aside. So then this guy is actually, he's not capped, so he's also not a volume. We'll just pick maybe in here, mark that seam and unwrap, and we're good to go there. Move it aside. Let's see, what's next? Let's do these guys. So these are all fairly similar. As you can see, where they actually touch the surface, there's no face. So basically all we have to do is mark these two seams underneath and then unwrap, and that should be good to go. Next we will do maybe this part, the beam or whatever it's called. Let's try this first. Okay, I don't like the way that's warping it, so let's not do that. Let's try it here on the inside so it's still hidden. Oops. Alright, that's looking better. There's some stretching going on here. Oh, you know what? That's not too bad. Maybe... yeah, I kind of like that. Yeah, I mean, most of it's going to be hidden, so it's not... that's not too bad. Maybe even just clear that, and we'll just split it into two different islands, because it's mostly going to be hidden anyways, and that's probably the cleanest way for us to do it. Let's do the wheels next. So this is the second way of doing cylinders. You can select, oh, by the way, if you're, probably something I should have mentioned, I'm on edge select mode right now, and that's why I can select these two without selecting all of the rest, and select the bottom and just leave that. So this is something that you should know if you've used Blender, but it's probably something that I should have mentioned anyways. And let's just hit U, unwrap, or nope, mark seam. That's not right. And then you unwrap, and now we've got those. So those are the wheels there. I think all that's left is these two things. And let's I'm not sure, but I think maybe the best way would be to remove this. I mean, this isn't really going to be that hidden, so that could cause some problems during texturing, but ultimately it's not that huge a deal in my opinion. You generally want to keep your seams hidden, but sometimes you just don't have that luxury based on the mesh. Oops. Alright, I like that. Okay, now that that's done, what you can do is you can average them out again, and then pack them. Oops. Select everything first, average them out, and then pack them. And that is actually pretty decent. We could probably make some changes, and I'm actually going to show you how to do that now. So one of the things that you'll want to keep in mind is that Blender doesn't always pack things in the best way possible. As you can see, there's a ton of empty space here, and if we just go pack islands, you can see it's pretty much just gonna reiterate what it does. So what you can do is you can basically scale it all way down, hide it up in the corner, bring the 2D cursor to the corner by left clicking if you're curious, just as close to the corner as you can, and then maybe just zeroing it out. And then what you can do is you can start, one by one, just sort of placing these in here within like an imaginary square. It doesn't have to be an exact square because eventually... Oh, what's going on here? Is a median point? Okay, median point it is. Because eventually you're going to scale it back up and you're probably going to readjust everything and make sure it's all good. So just remember not to scale anything, and if you have anything that's laid down pretty much straight and you need to rotate it by 90 degrees each time. So you really just, it's pretty much just like a complicated game of Tetris. Well, except you don't lose. You just constantly make it better and better until you can't make it better anymore. Not really sure where to put these. And actually something that I find really annoying is when these are packed so tightly that there's no space for the texture to bleed. I think that's what it's called. Bleeding. Basically when you have a texture and it ends, the UV, basically all of the texture detail ends right where the UVs are. You can have this problem at the seams where it just blends into pure alpha and it really makes the texture look ugly and the seams look very apparent. So what you want to do is you want to let it bleed a little bit, and what that does is it basically just makes sure that you don't have any transparency. If you don't have any space to bleed, sounds so terrible by the way. If you don't have any space for your textures to bleed, it can cause some problems. And this can happen within corners or anywhere that like the textures are too close. If you're using Substance though, Substance does have a solution for that, so that's not too bad. Okay, so here I'm just fast forwarding through everything because it actually took a long time for me to record this UV, I guess, packing section of the tutorial. But essentially, as I mentioned before, I'm just packing everything as tightly as possible initially so that I can get a good idea of where things are. If you're wondering, I'm using Shift-L to select and deselect islands. The reason why you would use Shift-L is because if you just use L, your selection will only be the object that you had the mouse over. Now when everything's packed into place, what you can do is you can switch back to median point. You can further pack things in, make things nice and tight, just to make sure that when you scale it up again, it'll actually fit. And I'm just packing everything in as tightly as possible, given the extra space that was given to me by scaling the islands up. Okay, so now you can see that I'm using as much of the surface as I possibly can, and when we go back, everything still looks good. Anyway, so I hope you've learned a lot from this tutorial. If you have any more questions about UV unwrapping or anything that has to do with Blender and 3D modeling and texturing, materials, whatever you want, I will be more than happy to let you know, or I guess do a tutorial. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and check out my channel because I will be doing more tutorials in the future.